Welcome, one and all, to the electrifying realm where passion meets precision, where strategy collides with skill. Welcome to Breaking Lines, a new football podcast that goes beyond the scores and delves into the hearts and minds of the beautiful game. I'm your host, Dave Carolan, joined by the astute and insightful Gary Rowett, as we embark on a journey to dissect the highs, the lows, and everything in between within the world of football. In this podcast, we're not just here to narrate the matches, we're here to unravel the intricacies of the sport, offering you a front row seat to the behind-the-scenes world of the football manager and the backroom staff, where we reflect on the tactical masterstrokes, the unpredictable narratives that make football the global spectacle that it is. Combining my background in performance and sports science and Gary's first-hand experience as a seasoned manager and player, Breaking Lines promises to be your go-to source for insights into the challenging world of team management. An immersive experience that transcends the boundaries of the pitch. So whether you're a die-hard fan seeking in-depth analysis or a casual observer eager to learn more, join us every episode as we peek behind the dressing room doors of the world's most beloved sport. Get ready for passionate discussions, expert insights, and a celebration of the sheer brilliance that unfolds on the hallowed turf. This is Breaking Lines, where the game is more than just a result, it's the stories waiting to be told. So Gary, after many months of planning, we're finally in front of the mics and ready to record the first episode here of Breaking Lines. A project long in the making, but the genesis of this is something to be told, I suppose, of where this idea came from, why we've ended up in front of the mic running our own podcast.
I think two nearly 50-year-olds drinking red wine on a Thursday evening in London, awaiting our fate at the weekend. I think there's probably the start of it, Dave, I would imagine, wouldn't it? I think we talked about it briefly on the first glass. The second glass started to get a little bit more in depth and quite serious. And I think some of the ideas got more and more varied, didn't they? More and more random. But
I think they become more full-bodied as we got into whether it was Malbec or
it was good Malbec, wasn't it? It was good Malbec by the sounds of it.
Yeah, I suppose it was just our passion, isn't it, for trying to get better at what we do and telling stories about what we'd seen over our years, many years and many hundreds and thousands of games probably, that we thought, why don't we share this stuff, and why don't we take the discussions that we were having on a balcony and share them with everyone else?
Yeah, and I think we've worked together for a long time as well, haven't we? So we've got an understanding of how each other work. We've obviously both seen some of the ups and downs of some of the clubs that we've been at and some of the leagues that we've played in. So I think it's one where, look, I think we can obviously give hopefully a unique perspective, a unique behind the scenes look at some of the things that the fans don't get to see, and I think it's nice for us hopefully to be able to share that with our own opinions thrown in as well.
And I think as both avid podcast listeners, we've seen many or listened to many different types of podcasts, whether it's something that's coming from a player's perspective or a fan's perspective or a pundit's perspective, and we hadn't really come across anyone who's been knee deep in the weeds of actually delivering this stuff and trying to prepare teams and dealing with the day-to-day issues that we come across, whether it's dealing with players or preparing training or preparing for games or whatever happens after games. I suppose that's the bit that people probably don't really hear about as much.
No, and I think for us it's just the norm, isn't it? I suppose it's just trying to bring that norm to life for people who don't get to see that. That's our day-to-day job, and it's the day-to-day things we probably take a little bit for granted. But actually, for the football fans out there, hopefully to get a little bit of a slice of what the action looks like behind the dressing room door, if you like, or maybe I might need to rephrase that one. But I think, like you say, we listen to podcasts because you got no choice, have you? If you're driving for 3 hours, probably sat in London traffic for an hour of it. So we've certainly had our fair share, and hopefully we can add to that for the people also stuck on the M11 at 7 o'clock on a Monday morning.
Or 3 o'clock in the morning after driving back from Swansea across country, as whatever the case may be. But yeah, I suppose we also don't want it to be too dry either, don't we? We've got plenty of stories to go with the issues that we'll talk about and that we see come up across the many episodes that we hope to record. But I suppose there's a lot of experiences and stories we've had, and seen funny things, seen strange things, and seen quite concerning things even.
Yeah, and I think one of our main things as well is not to try to name too many people. Of course, most football books, football podcasts, of course, you can dig a few ex-teammates out, or you can dig a few members of staff out. But I think the key for us is to give that behind-the-scenes analysis, like you say, hopefully have a little bit of fun. It's important, I think, we have a little bit of fun doing it. That was why we wanted to start it, wasn't it? So, and hopefully don't incriminate too many people, but who knows?
Well, of course, if you are one of those people that has worked with us in the past and you want to keep your name out of this podcast, please send stamped addressed envelope with cash in it, and I'm sure we can keep your name out of the spotlight. But yeah, that's a little bit of the background behind why we've decided to take to the mic as such, and hopefully you enjoy the content. It'd be great to get your feedback when you listen to the episodes, and let us know things that you like, things that you rather we didn't talk about, or send us some questions. I'm sure you guys listening will have thoughts and questions about what you see goes on a Saturday on the pitches of the world when you're watching football, but maybe want to know, well, why would the manager make a certain decision? Why do we train players in certain ways? So we'd love to get your questions and your queries come into us.
Here we go. Welcome to Breaking Lines podcast.
Well, all well here on a bright sunny day in London, and nice to get out of Norfolk. Not that I don't like Norfolk, but nice to get down into the city again, where we spent so much time.
What a start. You're insulting the whole city of, well, the whole county, not even a city, the whole county of Norfolk. That could have been a really interesting 2-footed challenge right at the start of the podcast.
Yeah, well, I'm sure at some stage that'll be referred to VAR, and it's again not been an auspicious week for VAR, has it again?
Wow. If you're Gary O'Neill, or if you're Eddie Howe, you're ruining the introduction of VAR, aren't you? Certainly. It's causing a lot of controversy at the moment. If you're Howard Webb, there must be a part of you that doesn't know where to look next, because something that was designed to simplify football and refereeing to a certain degree has actually made it far more complicated, hasn't it? So yeah, it's getting a hot topic of conversation.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be every 2 or 3 minutes that we're sat down discussing about another game, and we're discussing another VAR controversy. And it's got to be difficult for managers. Obviously, one week a VAR decision goes in their favour, next week it goes against them. So how do you pitch that as a manager? Like when it goes for you versus when it goes against you, it's not an easy thing to balance, is it?
No, I think sometimes if they go against you, they can not cost you necessarily points or the game. And I think that's a challenge, isn't it? I think when they're so extreme, when you look at some of the cases recently, let's take Gary O'Neill's situation, it feels like every single week a decision has gone against Wolves. And not just a decision where you can clearly hear it's a manager just venting his frustration because A, he's lost the game, and B, he's had the decision to go against him, but they're clearly affecting the game, and they're clearly been I'd say clearly in the opinion of most people, in and out of football, in football, players, coaches, managers, fans, ex-referees, most of the decisions have been deemed to have been wrong. And I think that's the challenge then. And I think actually, someone like him, he's handled it pretty well, because it would be very, very easy to say the wrong thing, do an Arteta, shall we say.
Yes. Well, I suppose for every VAR controversy we would get, we're probably also ignoring a lot of decisions that they possibly get right as well. And is it any different from the old days when a refereeing decision, it was generally accepted at the game, and then it was later on Match of the Day when it got played back in glorious Technicolor with all the video replays that it then became controversial. Whereas nowadays we've just shortened that timeline. Like everything in modern society, the time between us seeing the thing and us getting a instant reaction to it means that essentially we're now taking that Match of the Day decision that was seen 5-6 hours later, normally when you'd been to the pub and maybe you had a couple of pints and you got home and you saw the decision that you didn't know anything about at the game, and now you were angry.
I think the VAR situation, is really interesting, isn't it? Because I think that the problem is, firstly, it's not as much fun, is it? It doesn't fit modern society to say, do you know what? Let's look at the ones he got right. Let's look at all those decisions right. And there's no doubt statistically, they're probably getting more decisions right than wrong. But the problem is, because the expectation of the modern football fan and everybody involved in football, or everyone who loves watching football, which we're all passionate football fans, aren't we? Ultimately, and we're expecting the introduction of VAR to essentially eradicate any mistake. Lofty as that may be, those expectations, that's what we're hoping for, aren't we? We're hoping that every single decision is right. And unfortunately, when people get them wrong, or when there's 3 or 4 that are wrong, that lingers and it feels like every decision is wrong. And I think that's, like you alluded to, I think that's the challenge. We probably are being very, very unfair on officiating at the moment.
But is that not the case, that you want the decisions right in your favour? And there's 2 teams. So as soon as, of course, you've got somebody who's saying it's a terrible decision, you've got somebody else who's willing to accept it.
Yeah, listen, you're never willing to accept it unless it's for your team. Of course, why would you? This is football, this is passion, this is what we want to do. We all want to win.
No, good as the games.
We all want to win. No, sportsmanship, forget about all those things. It's about winning, isn't it? And about 3 points. Yes. And it's about going out with your mates later, or going back home and being elated about the result. And unfortunately, a lot of these things seem to be taking the enjoyment out of it. It's not just the results, is it? It's a stop-start nature of football. I think what's happening now is the game's too fragmented, the game's too broken up, and unfortunately that flow and excitement of celebrations and moments in the game, that spontaneity just seems to be going, doesn't it?
Well, is it potentially a case, for example, in rugby union, it's the TMO, or in cricket the third umpire, whatever it is, they've been a lot more mature in their kind of time that they've been in existence. They've had a longer kind of run in before they've got to a point where it's like accepted that how those processes run. If you look at a rugby union match, for example, the process that to go through to get to decisions is quite different to what we're seeing in football. It's very public. Everybody can see what's going on. Everyone can hear the decision making. Do you think it's also the lack of input that people are getting at games? So fans in the stadium don't know what's going on. They can't see anything. They're not hearing anything. In which case, if there's a 2 or 3 minute delay, then they're none the wiser why the goal is or isn't going to be given, or whether a penalty is or isn't going to be given.
Well, we spoke about it earlier, didn't we? We sat having a coffee earlier, and literally, we were talking about, why is it so complicated? What is so complicated about it? And I think, at the moment in football, this is what it feels like to me. When you're listening to or watching a game, it stops. No one knows what's happening. You hear the commentators say they're checking for an early incident, handball. Now they're checking for offside. Now actually they're checking for an initial offside, not just the player that scored. So it feels like they're actually and obviously they have to a certain degree. They're actually actively looking for a number of things to check, and it just takes so much time. Yeah. You mentioned about rugby, and you spoke about rugby union and the way it works, and maybe you can describe that, but it just feels so much clearer and so much less protracted, the whole process. Yeah,
I think you're right. And generally speaking, I think there's probably a culture in rugby where people accept the decisions of the officials a lot more. And maybe in football, we've always had the referees as the people who are almost ruining the game, or rather than enabling the game, they're kind of ruining the game by getting decisions wrong. And we know statistically, as you said, like they get 95%, or maybe that's the PGMOL telling us they got a good side
propaganda. Good propaganda.
Yeah. Keep telling them it's 95%. There must be a league table somewhere of decisions that VAR have gone right and wrong for teams.
Oh, league table of refs. League table of refs. That would be really... No, it'd be interesting though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think there may be bias involved in that, depending on A, results, and B, personalities,
Possibly.
Yeah, it's not going to be an easy fix, this though, is it? Because you even see it since the weekend. You've got one manager saying VAR should be binned, and you've got last night another manager in the Championship saying we should have VAR in the Championship. Would you have VAR in the Championship?
Well, not on the basis of what I've seen in the Premier League. I mean, there's always been this, could we have something like a VAR light, which has been discussed, I think, quite vigorously within the sort of powers that be. A lot of the high level meetings of, we can't make it cost. The cost of VAR is absolutely extortionate, and to bring that into the Championship and then potentially fan that out down the league, because obviously that's what will happen in the end, because it's a professional game, and you could potentially argue that now 5 leagues in England are professional, because the conference, yes, I would imagine, is probably virtually 100% professional teams now. So VAR Lite was a cheaper version, a shorter version, probably a more simplistic version. But you're going to get the same problems. And I'm not sure, just like the added time, I'm not sure these things are actually... They're designed to help the product. This is a big thing. They're designed to the stakeholders in the game have pushed these technologies to help with a fan experience and to help the game. And I think the challenge with it is, if you actually strip it down, a lot of these things don't feel like they're actually helping the game or helping the product, because that's what it's about. It's about the product. There's so much money involved, and I don't think it's helping the product at all.
One of the things I think that has always interested both of us is the psychology of teams, like not just how we play, but the psyche of getting players ready, getting players prepared, and putting them out there to play. But across the season, like the part of the season that we're in now, we're like 17, 18, 19 games into the season. You can be on an incredible run of form or a terrible run of form or really inconsistent. I mean, that's how do you approach that? So let's start with the easiest one that probably will jump into everybody's mind, which is you're on a winning run. Does winning just take care of itself as a manager or as a team?
Yeah, I don't mean anything takes care of itself, but I think to a certain degree, when you're in flow, as we speak, in sort of top level sport, where everything just seems to be working seamlessly and players just seem to be full of confidence, and I think to a certain degree you can continue to follow the same process, the same training methods, you can keep the same team a lot, and teams do build confidence, and teams do go, speak to players and they do go out there feeling like you just know you'd win. We just know we would win. And I don't think you'd ever get to that point as a manager, because I think you turn up every game I don't think you ever know what's going to happen, of course. Well, no one does, but, you have a good feeling. I think as a manager, you always fear the worst to a certain degree, that a good run's going to come to an end, or, or the flip side where, a bad run, is also going to come to an end. You have that feeling sometimes. But I think players' confidence, you have opportunities at times to build that. And I think that's the key. You have moments where you can build it. Let's talk about, some of the moments we've had in games where you win a game, the team's played a lot of matches, there's a free week ahead. You might be playing on a Sunday, the next game. You might go Saturday to Sunday. So you've kind of got an extra day in there. And it's so easy sometimes to go at the end of a game, when you've won, in that dressing room, to go, it's a really easy trick. Right, lads, see you Tuesday. And I've never heard, 3 words be greeted with so much excitement.
The joy
of the players. And that, well, it is though, isn't it? Because, as soon as you say that, suddenly there's such a great thing. And then I've done it before so many times, and you've witnessed it, where you say it and almost just walk out the dressing room, leave a little clanger, you drop a name in a conversation, you leave it there, walk out, and you can tell me, but the players afterwards, there is such a buzz in the dressing room. But it's moments like that will carry you forward over the next period of time. So there's little tricks, but you've seen it. What the players like, because there's very few things you can give the players. You can give them more money, but that's not always under your control.
Yeah.
Or you can give them time off at times. You can give them appreciation, you can value them. There's all of those things, but it's a very, very easy extrinsic reward of a day off. Yes. So how do the players greet that? You tell me.
Oh, I think once you've thrown that in, and the odd time you've given me that look across, and I know what's coming.
You're about to do the running.
We're about to do the running. So, you've got players who've not played for 6 games who are now thinking, actually, I could benefit from training.
Yeah.
Even in the heart of hearts, they're going to think, actually, I just need to train more. But now the manager's just chucked in an extra day off. And don't get me wrong, everybody's happy about it. But you get outside, and I think everyone appreciates if you've had a good performance and that carrot's been thrown in. I like to call it the carrot. The carrot method. Easy for me to say. Not even be drinking, people. But yeah, that carrot method of being able to hook onto that feeling, that enthusiasm and joy after. Sometimes it's not even a win; it's a great performance. You've just come back from the dead in a game, and you've pulled a result out of the bag, and you just know it's going to benefit everyone. Or you've been on a long run of games where everyone's feeling a little bit fatigued because, despite maybe what people think that they're highly paid professional players and they should be able to just do it, it is intense training, and they're intense games, and it is intense psychologically. So getting that little bit where I suppose everybody listening would know that feeling when you should be at work, but you're not at work. I suppose in the normal world, you can throw a sickie in and you can sit at home and watch Netflix for the day, but it's probably an equivalent feeling to that the players can just know that they can relax for an extra day. The training is going to be a bit more balanced the following week. Because they're not having to travel, they're not having to come in and do a session or whatever. It's just it's a great way to bounce into the following week. And as you said there, when you're trying to just keep rolling in that enthusiasm from game to game, when you're on a winning run, then it's perfect, So we then know that, at least from our perspective on the physical side, we go outside, we do some hard work, and we box them off, and then they'll see us on Tuesday as well.
I think for all the gardeners out there, I just want to define that Dave's carrot method has nothing to do with the actual vegetable. So just in case there's a little bit of confusion, everyone's out there going, wow, I wonder what his carrot method really is. Does he water it 3 times a day with
it helps
smart water?
Smart water. Other sponsorships are
what does he do? So, look, I think there's little tricks, isn't there? You can't do that all the time because, of course, players decondition, and there's times to do it and times not to do it. You hear about international breaks, don't you, where if you win at the end of an international break, it's quite an easy one. We've done it before where we've kind of gone, right, you've got 2 days off, and for every game you win in the next 4, you can have an additional game off. So is that just a motivational tool where you probably know you'd give them 4 days off anyway in an intense period? Some managers rock in, and I never understand this, some managers rock in and go, right, here's a week off or 10 days off. In my opinion, those managers are doing that for themselves to have time off, because there's no way that length of time off helps performance. When you're a finely tuned athlete, I'm not talking about us now.
Yeah, obviously.
I'm talking about the players. When you're a finely tuned athlete, again, you have to train, you have to work. 2 or 3 days off in a busy schedule, I don't think is a massive problem, but you can't give, you're having to start again afterwards. But there's lots of little motivational tools, isn't there, in order to do it. Be really interesting to see what the top managers do, because I've got a feeling they don't. I mean, do they still do these types of things? Do they still give? It'd be interesting, wouldn't it, to see like a Man City or a Liverpool? Do they do the same type of thing, or do they just, are those players motivated because they're the top professionals?
I think that the top teams, they don't have any time to do 4 days off. International breaks for them are, all their players are internationals, so they're going to be going away. I suppose it's for the other teams that are maybe in the Premier League who haven't got so many players who are playing well, they're not in the Champions League, they're not in the Europa League or Conference or any other, the Wendy Fair League Cup.
You want time off from that. Let me tell you. Slough Town away and Wokingham Town, that was tough. That was tough on a Wednesday night.
Tough places to go.
Tough places to go,
That's going to be an additional series we'll do, which is tough places to go. But I suppose, they don't have that opportunity to do that time, and their players are very much in flow. We're actually breaking that is not good for them. They just roll from game to game to game. And as much as we talk about trying to manage players' load. At least if there's consistency, there's predictability about it. So I think they'd probably err less on the giving random extra days off, in blocks of 2 or 3 or 4. That probably wouldn't work for them. But I suppose the only time they ever really get to do that is when it comes to FA Cup weeks and things like that, if they get knocked out early. So always suspicious of those people who get knocked out in the third round. It's never happened to us, of course.
Obviously not.
No.
We usually came in on the first round.
I suppose
about my time at Burton there.
I suppose the carrot method is a breakdown of the old carrot and stick method, but nowadays you can't really use a stick with players, can you? It doesn't really seem to work.
I think it's changed. I think it has changed, and I think my theory on this, and I've spoken about this quite a lot previously, in conversations. But my belief is, we used to all of us older people, we grew up in an autocratic society, didn't we? Like your dad told you what to do.
Sir.
Your mum told you what to do. You had a respect for the police. You had a respect for authority, your school teacher.
Yeah.
And there was discipline involved. And that was just the way it was. Whether that was right or wrong, that was the way it was. So when a manager had a go at you, you were kind of used to it a little bit. And you'd learn to just take it on the chin, accept it. And then some players would go under even then. Some players would have a little bit of a fight. I remember Sam Allardyce once when I was on loan at Blackpool. At half-time in a game, I came in and I thought I'd done all right, and he absolutely rinsed me. I'm talking like to the point where he laughed about it. 2 days later, he said, "How angry were you when I did that?" And he knew. And, and I realised at that point it was a really clever technique, but he knew that I would go, right, I'll show you. And I was angry going out onto the pitch second half, and I played as well as I played 45 minutes. So it's good management. But I think nowadays, players are just not used to that. And that's just the way it is. Society's changed. It's a very different world that we live in. And for the benefit, in many aspects of it, that's a whole different debate. But so I think players now, you have to go about it slightly differently. You have to try to positively reinforce a lot of their good actions. You have to try and get under the skin of the character and make them feel. I mean, this is why the best managers are the best managers. Tactically, I think most people, you look at the Premier League now, a lot of teams are playing like Man City.
Yep.
So why do Man City win everything? And of course the players and, all of these things, the quality of the players. But I think the big factor is Guardiola gets his players loving the game. He gets under the skin of his players. He just has this magical knack. So forget the tactics, forget everything else. From a psychology point of view, he understands what makes players tick. And I think Klopp's the same. You look and you go, the players look like they love him. And that's a really difficult thing to do. So I think they're two very good examples of the way football's changed. Now, I'm not saying they won't give a player a little bit of criticism, but I think that's massively, massively changed. And I think, certainly over the last 5 or 10 years, we've seen that come into the dressing rooms that we've worked in. How do you see that from a performance perspective? Has that changed the way you would deliver sessions in terms of how you deliver it, or has that never changed?
No, I think you're now far more tuned into the fact that you're a salesperson. You're trying to sell whatever you need the players to do, and keeping them on a positive keel, so that everything's towards their benefit. Back in the day, I suppose, where you could tell you're letting the team down by not doing something, that doesn't really wash anymore with players. You now have to appeal to their inner sense of self and that ego where, this isn't benefiting you. You're not getting the most out of yourself. So you're always having to kind of push that side with players. Of course, if you're maybe in a situation where you're Man City or you're Liverpool or you're a top team where you're winning a lot, I mean, their challenge is probably more complacency than it is the challenge of maybe going from win to loss to runs of losses. And, those are the challenging times when you're maybe losing a number of games, and now you're trying to get players to do stuff that they need to do. It's important for them to get back to a positive performance, either physically or as a team. I suppose that's the challenge, isn't it? How do you keep everybody? It's easy to keep people doing the right things when things are going well. The challenge is, how do you stop them falling away from stuff when things aren't going well, when they think that the things that they were doing before have caused the fact that we're now not winning, because, we've had it in the past where we might question the training, or we question the strength and conditioning stuff we're doing in the gym, or the travel, whatever it is. We're going to try and find something to blame for when we're not winning. But when we are winning, like, those things aren't getting questioned. We're not putting the same level of detail into, are we traveling the right way? Are we eating the right foods? Whatever.
But that's where that no excuses culture comes in, doesn't it? If you're losing games, so you have to, for me, there's really easy ways of doing it. So the way I would usually do that is you pick out, if you're on a losing run, you pick out the good bits you're doing in games, and you show that and show that and show that and keep showing the players it. You simplify the game and the messages as much as you possibly can. Again, that's the, when managers lose dressing rooms, so to speak, if that's even a thing. But when managers do that, for me,
definitely a thing.
Yeah,
fans definitely believe that losing the dressing room is a thing.
But if that is a thing, it usually comes from different things, doesn't it? The team gets changed all the time. The formation gets changed all the time. The way of playing gets changed all the time, and that uncertainty for the players leads them to then start blaming all of the things that are outside of their own control. Maybe top. I read a comment in the week, and I think it came from Roy Keane, that said the top players don't blame other things. They find a way to look, or something around, they find a way to look within their own performance and do something about it. They don't need someone else to tell them.
I can chuck in some sports science terminology here, which is, it's a self-serving attributional bias.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, so you're going to have to explain exactly what that means. Essentially,
high performers take responsibility.
Yeah.
They look at themselves, they look at everything that's inside their control, and then they move from that outside. Poor players or lower level, they're looking at the outside straight away. Who can I blame? What can I blame? To take the pressure off myself. And that's what separates these top players, really.
And that's and I suppose that marks a challenge, because the reality is we haven't worked with those top players. But that's true, isn't it? So what do you do?
Signing some of them.
But well, exactly. I know. Blame recruitment. Or blame the budget. But I think you're right, and I think what you have to then do is, if you're working with players at a championship level, League One level, or whatever that is, you have to accept that some of those players aren't those top players. So how do you get the best out of them? And I think, again, I think going back to the carrot and stick method, the carrot we've spoke about a little bit, and different ways of doing that.
Yeah.
The stick to me now has changed. So the stick used to be battering a player, criticising them in front of a group, not in front of a group, whatever it was. Now it's, there's such an easy way to do it now within the tactical framework of a team, because it's, look, I need you to do that. I need you to press better when we're playing against the back three. This is you're pressing from the inside where you need to press from the outside.
Yeah.
Look at your body shape. You need to do that better. So there's a really easy way of almost shaping it as, it's not a criticism, but it's in order for the team to do what it needs to do and to function as well as possible, you need to help me to do this. That used to be, basically, effing close him down quicker, you idiot. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's exactly the same, but it's just framed in a much more technical way to the player. You can show them clips now, whereas perhaps that was a lot harder to do back in the day. So I think that both the methods are still there. Both the methods are still, you're never going to change those methods, are you? Psychology will call them so many different things, but essentially it remains the same. And it's just, the best managers find the right moment at the right time in order to do it.
Well, I think that's part one of an infinite series that we could go through of psychology of teams. So I'm sure we'll touch upon this again, probably in the very next podcast at some stage. We'll talk about psychology of the teams. But anyway, we'll come back to that shortly. Well, let's get into some of the major topics of this week, Gary. And it's certainly been another interesting week for football managers when we've seen another 3 managers go down all practically in the space of a few hours of each other. Monday was a little bit of carnage.
Crazy, wasn't it? I think I think I was in my son was running Valencia Marathon. I was over there for 3 days, and literally on the flight back, I landed, turned my phone back on, and it was Swansea have sacked their manager. Who else had sacked their manager? Sunderland had sacked their manager. So Mowbray had gone, Michael Duff had gone. And straight away you're like, wow, that just sums up basically the Championship on a 2-hour, 15-minute flight. 2 people have lost their jobs. I think, it probably highlights... Yeah, probably. I mean, it's interesting why the changes in the Championship, isn't it? Because I suppose if you look at the Premier League, apart from the top teams who are fighting it out for how high they can finish and the European places, and I suppose obviously there's a massive financial pressure on where they finish and which competition they finish in. And there's a few down the bottom, isn't there? But there's probably 3 or 4 that know they're going to be in a relegation fight all season. So that probably hasn't changed too much in terms of their aims and ambitions. I don't see too many getting dragged into that. But the Championship, it's like every team's playing for something. Every team's either playing to not get dragged down in towards the bottom 3, of which you could argue there's probably 10 teams.
Yes.
And then you've got the teams that are trying to make the playoffs, of which you could argue is probably going to be about 14 or 15. In fact, probably more than that, because, you saw it last season, teams like Coventry, that were struggling around this sort of time and just went on a ridiculous run and got themselves in the mix. So yeah, I mean, that's why so many clubs are making such, not knee-jerks, probably unfair because it's their money, it's their prerogative, but making quite feels like from the outside impulsive decisions.
The following morning, then we see Paul Heckingbottom. He leaves his job at Sheffield United, and that's strangely the first Premier League management casualty of the season. So you've had 9 different managers, change roles as such in the Championship, whether they're sacked or mutual consent or whatever the situation might be. But in the Premier League, it seems far more stable. Is that because people have been given more time, or is it going back to what you said that maybe the teams are at the bottom, they give time to their managers because they've potentially just come out of the Championship, they've earned the right to have a go and try and keep the team in the Premier League? Or is there a different mentality or ethos going on at those clubs in the Premier League, which is vastly different to those clubs in the Championship?
I think there has to be. I think if you look at it, it seems almost counterintuitive to suggest that the Premier League's far more stable than the Championship, because you wouldn't imagine it would be, would you? You'd think the money's far greater and the riches are far greater to get into, the Champions League places, to get into the Europa League, to stay, hundreds of millions of pounds to stay in the Premier League. So you'd imagine really that actually those clubs would probably be more impulsive. But if you look at, that's what I suppose I'm saying. If you look at the actual teams within there, I'm trying to get the Premier League table up as we speak at the moment. And if you look at
this is live, people. This is not pre-recorded.
This is how we're gonna work. We're gonna be try and be finger literally on the pulse. Apart from the fact I can't turn my iPad on. But if you look at the moment, obviously Sheffield United have made the change on the back of 3 straight defeats. But you look at them and they're 4 points away from safety. So you can imagine for someone like them, they're thinking maybe we have to make a change. Harsh in some ways, in as much as they lost 2 of their best players in the summer. Sander Berge being one of them.
Yes,
who went to a rival team, and they haven't really strengthened massively. So I'm not sure what their expectation is to stay in that division if you're not going to at least give Paul Heckingbottom the chance to do that. And I think that's why they brought Chris Wilder in, because he knows the players. He's not going to expect millions and millions of pounds to spend, or I'm sure he'd like that in January and probably need it. But he might just be able to galvanise them. You look at Burnley, maybe Burnley are one, but obviously they're quite comfortable with company. It feels like they're going down a style of play that they're almost now wed to after last season's success. And Everton, of course, with a points deduction, but I think we'll get out of it. Without me going through all of them, but you look at Luton, they know they're going to be in a fight. So at this moment in time, even though they're 17th, 4th from bottom, I think Rob Edwards is doing a really, really good job in giving them that fighting opportunity. And then, I would imagine Forest are probably one of those next ones, maybe just thinking about what do we do. Other than that, more or less, most of the teams are in and around, apart from the likes of Chelsea, but are in and around where you'd expect them to be at this stage of a season, give or take 1 or 2 positions. So I suppose there isn't that much surprise with the Premier League at this moment in time. And that's maybe why most of those clubs are sticking rather than twisting. And as you said, the Championship's a very different beast.
So on that, when you've had maybe periods where you've been in the Premier League and then teams come out of the Premier League and then they seem to then go on this run of potentially have been stable with a manager for a long time and then almost start to get into this, I suppose, hamster wheel of short-term management appointments, see if it works. If it doesn't work quickly, change again. You look at the likes of, say, clubs that ironically we've been at, but Norwich have gone through, since Daniel Farr came out of the Premier League, they've been through 2 managers already. And then you look at someone like Stoke, who've, since they've come out of the Premier League, gone through 4 managers already. Does the pressure to get back to the Premier League become so overbearing on these clubs that they have to seemingly act quickly? Is that at board level, or would that be in the stands, or is it a mix of all of those?
I think it's a mix of all of those. I think most managers, they lose their jobs with a combination of things, don't they? Usually results dictate how people feel. When those results don't come over a sustained period, then often, of course, the fan base start to show their discontent and understandably so. You're paying your money, and there's ways to do it, I think, but I think that's getting more and more, or getting more, not impulsive, but it's getting quicker and quicker now. Used to be 7-8 games. Bad run now, it could be 2 or 3. It could be 2 or 3, literally,
or a bad half,
or a bad half. So I think So I think there's that external pressure. I think that pressure then transcends to the boardroom or the owners, and I think it all just starts to add to that melting pot. You can even put social media in there, because a lot of, I would imagine a lot of clubs, maybe not at ownership level, but certainly below that, have their hand on the pulse of social media and what the thoughts are of people. And I'm sure, obviously, they take into account the lack of balance at times with opinion. But yeah, so I think, and then you've also got style, because that's a big thing at the moment. This everyone stylistically wants to be a possession-based team, and which is quite an interesting debate in itself, because if 2 teams are playing, there's only one that can dominate possession, or only one that can have more possession than the other, of course, unless you've got 50-50. So if you ain't got possession, you need to be good off the ball as well. So I think there's a balance to that style for all clubs, and maybe sometimes people perhaps don't understand that as much, but yeah. So it's a really difficult one. I think the championship is just, it's a different beast. It just feels like a different beast. If you look at it, a lot of the Prem clubs, a lot of the top European clubs have a style of play, have a way, a philosophy throughout the club that maybe that, you look at someone like an Ajax that predominantly, not at the moment because they're having a poor time, but predominantly have had a way of playing, a style of playing, and they recruit the managers around that style. So they have a real good synergy. If you look at a championship, it can lurch from one type of manager to a different type of manager to a different style. And it's just such a short-term animal at the moment, isn't it, in many, many ways?
I think you make a great point there around stylistics, and maybe the communication of that to fans. Like, it is obviously something clubs are trying to address now, where certainly with sporting directors or whatever, trying to say this is the way we're going to play, and we're going to recruit a manager, and we're going to recruit players around this style. However, if that style doesn't seem to be working, either because the players aren't able to implement it or the manager isn't able to get it working with the players that he's got, does that then put like almost an albatross around your neck as such that now you're identified as having to play a certain way? That way isn't getting you results necessarily that you'd want or you'd foresee. is there an ability then to be able to suddenly go, well, I've got to find a way to just win games? And that might mean a complete lurch away from essentially what our club philosophy might be to what we need to get results.
Well, I think the first thing is, and I think some managers are better than other managers at doing it. I think some managers can, you can watch a game and think they haven't played that well really, but they've won the game 2-0. And the way to talk afterwards occasionally, and I understand it, is to really, really sell a style of play that actually when you watch the game probably hasn't quite transpired, but they've been very, very good at selling what they've told people they're going to produce. And of course, if you win 2-0, the amount of times we've won games and people have gone, oh, what an incredible performance. And we've actually analysed it and gone, we didn't really play well. And other games where we played really well for 40 minutes, conceded just before half time and lost the game 1-0, and everyone's battered it. And we've gone, actually, we've probably played a lot better than last week. So until you get that sort of objective, I think everyone reacts to the emotion of a game to a certain degree. And that's what the game's all about, isn't it? So I understand that. I think the difficulty for me at the moment is, when I see managers go in and I see everyone wants to try to say that they're going to play a possession-based style of football and an attacking style of football. And of course, that's everybody's utopia. If someone said to me, right, what's your preferred style of football? I'd say I'd love to be able to attack and score loads of goals and win loads of games. But there's a key.
And never concede, of course.
And you have to win. But there's a key. You have to win loads of games. If someone says to me, the style of play is everything, and I said, what? So I don't have to win games of football? No. Brilliant. I could play the greatest. Anyone can play a style of football that's exciting. Whether you win or not, that is the end product and the balance of what good football is. So I think it's a really difficult debate, isn't it? Because there's going to be a lot of people go into clubs, want to play an attractive style and a possession-based style, but not everyone's going to win doing it. So some teams are going to have to try and find the balance between attacking play, that pragmatic defensive side in those transitions in the game and in those moments in the game. And not every team are going to be able to dominate the ball. Not every, you look at teams up and down the country. To me, Arsenal, Man City play a similar way. Villa play a slightly different way. Liverpool play a slightly different way. Tottenham play a slightly different way. Chelsea definitely play a slightly different way. Obviously not as successful as they'd like to be at the moment, but they're a pacey counter-attacking side, But equally, they're all good, in my mind, they're all good to watch. So I don't think there's one way of playing, but I think that the danger at the moment is people going into clubs, they have to almost extol this one and only way, otherwise it's not acceptable. And like you said, sporting directors are now doing that as well, because they don't want people to associate them with a different style of play. So it's really, really interesting times at the moment in football, isn't it? And as we know, football moves in cycles, and it'd be interesting to see whether this cycle stays or whether we move to something slightly different or teams start to move away.
Well, I'm sure as the season goes on and the episodes keep rolling in, we'll come back to more sackings, because they're definitely going to happen. But it certainly was a lively start to this week where we had 3 in 24 hours. But let's see what the future makes of that.
Right, you've got to mark one player. You're a centre half. I know that's difficult to imagine.
Yes,
imagine yourself a
Martinez style.
Imagine yourself Martinez style. Right, you're marking Haaland or you're marking Harry Kane. Which one?
I'm taking Harry Kane. All right.
Wow. Why?
Yeah, I think Haaland for me possesses more threats. He can score goals in just many more ways, and he's going to expose me for A, lack of height, and B, lack of speed, and probably C, lack of ability. I don't think there's enough letters in the alphabet to be able to quantify the amount of things that he has that I don't. But certainly I just think Haaland's the ultimate. He's like the unicorn centre forward, isn't he? So Harry Kane, I probably think I'll be able to get close enough to at some stage and kick him. But I think Haaland will just bounce that off, probably laugh at me when shoving my head into the ground and then still scoring.
Sounds familiar. Sounds like our training session at Mill.
Okay, Gary, some questions back over the table at you. If you had to change a role in a football club, in the football department, what role would you change to? And you can't still be a coach or manager.
Oh, that's very easy. Head of performance, easiest role in football. Just turn up and be the best mates of the players. Tell them what you want to hear. Just if whatever happens, just say, well, look, I wouldn't do that, but it's the manager's choice, and I've got to respect him. I would say to the player, I would have picked you. I would. I love you. You could probably tough saying that to all 22 players. You might have to vary when you say that to them.
Yeah, we possess many different ways of blaming the manager for stuff. It's our own language.
Head of performance. That's right. Actually, no, probably. Well, yeah, I was thinking from a financial aspect as well, rather than just in it No, I'm still going for head of performance.
The energy you're giving me right now, guys, I think it will be enough for my 5 next matches. Because if you were not here, guys, I would probably lose the match. So I want all of you to know, when you sleep tonight, I won because of you.
We've done a lot of away games in our time. Is there any crowd that you've played in front of that you've not managed in front of, but you've played in front of or managed in front of that you thought their fans have the best banter chance?
Oh, that's going to be difficult, that one. Because I might have to apologise to Derby first, because Forest, when I was Derby manager, Forest fans used to love it. They used to absolutely love it. And I used to get the old, your trainers are shit, your trainers are, yeah, I don't know if I can swear on the podcast, but
it's our podcast.
Gary Rowett, your trainers are shit. Basically, that's what I used to get. And do you know what? It's funny because I used to give them a bit of banter back. So I remember doing the post-match and we'd drawn the game. So I knew neither team had won or neither team had lost. And they asked me about it. I said, well, look, you know what it's like. I said, this will come into fashion in Nottingham in about 6 months' time, probably. And it was just me having a bit of banter. You know what? My argument is, why can 20,000 or however many fans take the piss out of the manager and the manager can't have a little bit of banter back? Football's too serious. And for me, that was just a bit of fun. Of course, you get all the social media stuff saying, Rowett's an idiot and all this. But it's just a bit of fun. It's just a bit of humour. And I thought that I enjoyed those interactions with the fans. So I would say in terms of humour, probably the Forest fans.
To be fair, my mate Scotty, he is a Forest fan. And to this day, whenever I speak to him, he reminds me about your trainers on that day. So I don't know how bad they must have been, but for him to still be going on about it, either that or your response afterwards was good banter, and they took it the right way.
Scotty will 100% be wearing those same type of trainers 5 years later, out on a night out, claiming he looks good. And really, he'll know there's a subtle nod to my original style there.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please give us a like or subscribe to us on your chosen podcast provider. We look forward to seeing you on the next show.